Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 336 of A Yank on the Footy. In this episode, I'm going to be reviewing round 12 of the AFL and talking a little bit of cricket as well. I do hope you'll head over to my website at ayankonthefooty.com and get signed up on the mailing list, and hopefully you'll leave a 5-star review while you're there as well for the podcast. It's a huge help. You can certainly help out the show that way if you'd like to do that. Now, today's club of the episode, and I'm jumping back into that. I haven't done that the last couple of rounds. They are the Yeoman Robins of the Darwin Football Association down in Tasmania. And this club first played cricket back in 1895, but it's kind of unsure as to whether they played their first game or their first season of footy in 1896 or possibly 97 because the club lost their records in a fire in December of 1957. Now, 16 of this club's players fought in the First World War, with only 8 of them returning after the conflict. And the Yeoman name is one of the most unique ones that I've run across during my time of giving shout outs to local footy clubs. I really, first of all, I like this name for a reason I'll tell you about here in just a second. And on their website, it says that a yeoman is a countryman, especially one of some standing that is good reputation, who cultivates his own land. The adjective yeomanly means sturdy and reliable. Yeoman service means good, useful, or of substantial service. Now, I must say, full disclosure, during my time in the United States Navy back in the 1980s, I was a yeoman. In fact, I was a petty officer second class when I left the service in E5 here in the U.S. And I'd like to think that I provided good, useful, and substantial service while I was in. Helped to raise a naval officer who is serving right now as well. So really like the nickname of the club there in the community. Now, the club, they play their next game coming up on June the 15th against the Queenstown Crows. This is a rematch against the Crows at their home ground, the Wivenhoe Recreation Ground. And I do want to wish the Robins the absolute best of luck this season. They're looking for their first win still. Let's go get it this round, okay? Coming up on the 15th. I wish you all the best. And it was really, really great to read through all of the history of your club over on your website. Now, let's jump into the games for this week and a few things that I noticed this round. First of all, I did have the opportunity to fill in for my mate Mick Aussie on Sports Rage on Friday evening over on Sports Grid TV and Sirius XM satellite radio here in the U.S. Previewing 3 of the weekend's games. And I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart for having me on. I did get 2 of the 3 games right in my picks. And I got the West Coast and St. Kilda game incorrect, but it was a much more competitive game. It was a very competitive game. And if you've not seen the clip, I will put that in the show notes if you'd like to check it out. Gabe has been on the podcast a while back. Don't look now, folks, but the Hawthorne Hawks are quickly becoming a club that nobody wants to play. Okay. Full disclosure, their percentage is extraordinarily low right now. It's 86%. It's the 4th lowest in the comp. So this is a club that if they're going to have any finals aspirations, they're going to need to tack on maybe an extra win or two to overcome that 86%. They've moved ahead of 3 clubs that many people had playing finals. In fact, me, for one, I had these 3 clubs in my top 5 this year, and none of them are there. The Lions, the Crows, and the Saints. Dylan Moore had his 5th multi-goal game of the season, kicking 5 to lead the Hawks offense. And Hawthorne had 50% more inside 50s and 25% more clearances than the Crows did. Like I said, that percentage is going to be difficult to overcome. But Sam Mitchell has got this club primed this year to scare some other clubs, push some other clubs, maybe get some wins that people wouldn't have thought earlier in the year. They're still sitting 3, well, I'm sure I'll get to the Crows in a second, but this is a club that I think is going to be pushing for the 8 next year. I had this discussion with Mick Aussie back earlier in the year, and when I was putting together my ladder predictions, before the Hawks had their injuries in the defensive structure, I was contemplating putting the Hawks in my top 8. And I know as a Cat supporter, I'm not supposed to say that sort of thing. I still have that there, but I just think this is a side that is going to make the jump next year. And they're fun to watch. They really, really are. Now, the Crows, like I said, they've been playing a little bit better of late after a rough start to the year, but they're still 3 games below level. Fortunately for them, 7 out of their last 11 games are at the Adelaide Oval. They're going to be without Matt Crouch the rest of the way, though. He has shoulder injuries, having surgery, so he's going to be done for the year. But Hawthorn is becoming a club, like I said, that nobody wants to play. And looking at the impending suspension for our rising star favorite Harley Reid, looks like the competition for that is going to be wide open again. The Eagles played another very solid game, arguably without their best player not in the lineup, uh, in Tim Kelly. And yeah, I still think he's probably their best player. Harley Reid is going to probably take that spot here very, very soon, but I don't know if Reid is quite there yet. Some of you right now are shaking your head at me going, you dumbass. Of course he is. They did run out of petrol in the fourth, and Mason Wood closed out the game, kicking the final 2 goals to seal the Saints' victory. The Saints won only their second out of their last 7 games, and I think it's too late for them to resurrect their season. Of course, they could win everything else and prove me wrong, but St. Kilda still is playing some very slow, deliberate football, unlike Ross's previous club, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. Yeah, the Eagles, this is going to be a fun second half of the season, okay? Because despite where they are on the ladder, the Eagles are a club that are playing some solid football. The Kangaroos have done some, despite the fact that they've not won a game this year, have played some good football in bits and pieces here and there, and might still be able to snag a win or possibly 2 before the season is up. They're coming off their bye as well. But again, the Eagles and Saints game was the only game that I did not tip correctly this round, and I got fairly close on that. So I went 6-1 this weekend. I saw a lot of people talking about having gone 4-3, maybe 5-2. The Cats, they got healthy against a very scuffling Tigers side. The Cats won the clearance battle for the first time since round 5 when they played North Melbourne. They've been getting defeated in clearance, and if you've been listening to the podcast, I've been doing nothing but throwing the midfield under the bus. Now, they had 6 players over 26 disposals this week, and Max Holmes is kind of back in the midfield on a regular basis. They moved Mitch Duncan up there this week as well. It's likely they're going to get Paddy Dangerfield back this week. They might get Cam Guthrie back as well. And let's be honest, they're going to need it, okay? Because they're going to be heading up to the SCG to play the ladder leading Swans, and not going to be a lot of fun up there, I don't believe. Some of these youngsters, though, Jack Bowes, Tanner Bruin, started to exert themselves a little bit. Jai Clark might be back in the mix as well. Oliver Dempsey had a very good game himself as well. The Tigers, it's an absolute shame that McKelty Lafau's knee injury occurred when anybody gets hurt, but the young man he's been one of the highlights for the Tigers this year, and there have not been many. And there's so many injuries with the Tigers this year that he's been somebody that the Tigers fans can kind of gravitate towards and just look at this kid and go, yeah, he's 25, but he might be somebody who's going to be around here for the next few years to come help us. And of course, now he's probably going to be out until the early parts of next season, even if he's able to come back and play at the outset of the 2025 fixture. It's just been a great story watching him make the transition from rugby to footy. I want to wish him the best. Yeah, I don't know how many more wins the Tigers are going to get this year, but they played hard. They've played many games very tough this year. They've been hammered a couple times, but there are still some premiership players on this side. And when they get back in there, they're going to make life tough for whomever they're playing. And this is one of the great things about this season is that while we've got the top 2 or 3 teams that seem to have got themselves locked up there in the top of the ladder and thinking, yeah, this is where we're going to be, even those clubs at the bottom are going to make it difficult for them. It's not going to be an easy road for clubs to just roll through teams. Yeah, I know North Melbourne is getting outscored on a fairly, regular basis. Richmond has as well, but they're still playing clubs tough. They're not just rolling over and showing their belly and say, okay, take us and defeat us. Clubs are going to have to earn those points this year, okay? And of course, these players are going to be pushing towards ensuring that they find a spot either on their own side for next year or on possibly another side should they be delisted. But it's been a very fun year so far because there is, maybe with the exception of the Swans, there is some parity because there are a lot of clubs that are up in the 8 that a lot of people didn't think, yeah, we're going to be there. Essendon, come on. How many of you had Essendon in your 8 this year? I know they're not there permanently yet, but they're playing pretty good football this year. But I didn't have them there, I don't believe, if I remember correctly. Of course, I didn't have the Dockers there either, and they're there now. Boy, the D's, they miss Jake Lever. Stephen May's one of the best intercept marks in the game up there with Tom Stewart. But Butch has certainly struggled without his Sundance. That's for you older listeners. Robert Redford, Paul Newman, look him up. But the D's just look a little misguided. They've dropped all the way down to 17th in clearances. Think about that. You got Clayton Oliver, you got Christian Petrarca, you got arguably one of the best ruckmen, if not the best ruckman in the game, and you're 17th in clearances. Something is amiss in the red and the blue. Something is amiss there, and I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you fix it. Okay, I got to tip my cap to the Dockers though. They're playing an aggressive style of footy where they're just constantly pushing the ball up the ground. They more than doubled the D's in clearances. And what was interesting is that more than half of the Dockers who played in the game, 12 of them, kicked a goal. More than half the players kicked a goal. I mean, that is, yeah, it's impressive. And yes, this was an opportunity for them to really pad their percentage also, and they've actually jumped up to having the second highest percentage in the comp. Now they've got 3 tough weeks coming up here. This is going to be a great litmus test for the Dockers. Okay, they're traveling twice to go face the Bulldogs this week. Then they're home for the Suns, and then they travel to the SCG for the Swans. That's a tough 3 rounds right there. Yeah, the Suns are in the 8 right now. The Swans, of course, are sitting atop the ladder. The Bulldogs are right outside there, but the Bulldogs are a club that can score a ton of goals. And if they come out of that one winning 2 out of 3, you might be able to say that this is a side that's probably going to be playing finals. If they win all 3, wow, I think people are going to be jumping on the Dockers bandwagon here pretty soon. They're a fun team to watch. There's a lot of speed out there. Jai Miss gets his goal kicking woes straightened out. They can make some noise in the finals this year. Now, the last thing I wanted to get to, and I've kind of gone in this route here a little bit over the last couple of weeks, is not footy related. The ICC World Cup has started here in the Americas. I've been watching games from Guyana and Barbados and in Texas and New York. And the stadium that they built in Long Island in New York is only a temporary one. It's going to be coming down after this is done, which is a shame because it looks really nice, and it's seating, and it was not terribly crowded in the stands, but seating about 34,000 fans when it's full. And I imagine when they get some of the bigger matchups there, it's going to get close to getting filled up, but sounds like ticket prices are extraordinarily high. I'm nowhere near New York. I'm nowhere near Texas to go to any of these games, but with Willow TV, I can watch them. And I've watched the first 4 matches. I know there's one going on right now. Uganda, I believe, is playing Afghanistan as I'm recording this. But it was thrilled to see the United States team come out on top against Canada in the opening game. Aaron Jones and Andrew Gose, they led the American side with 94 runs on 40 balls and 65 runs on 46 balls, respectively. Harmeet Singh led the American bowlers. He bowled 4 overs, giving up only 27 runs for an economy of 6 3/4. And all 4 games so far have been very competitive. The West Indies beat Papua New Guinea, and Namibia defeated Oman in a super over by 11 runs. They just exploded. I think they had 21 runs in the super over to Oman's 10. And then the Sri Lanka and South Africa matchup was an interesting one for T20, at least in my opinion. And again, I'm fairly new to cricket. Okay, this is not something that I've watched a lot of. I mean, yes, I've had that cricket ball up there for almost 30 years, but including the cricket bat that's down here behind me as well. If you're watching on YouTube, I've had this cricket bat that I got from. Yeah, you can see it's all the shellac. It's been taped up here over the years, but this was from the next door neighbor of my brother-in-law and my sister when they were in England when he was in the Air Force. A gentleman who was a barrister who played cricket well into his 70s. He's since passed away. Cliff George, an absolute gem of a man. I met him several times. He's a really, really nice guy. Got to bring that back. You can tell times have changed because I don't think they let you bring a cricket bat back on a plane like they did at that point in time. Um, but this was interesting because, well, I've not watched a lot of Test cricket. What I've surmised from Test cricket is that the batters in Test cricket are much more defensive with their batting. They're much more selective at the balls that they actually take healthy swings at. There's a lot of just trying to deflect the ball, hit it on the ground directly back to the bowler, or hit it a short distance to where it's not far enough for either of the bowlers to actually, or excuse me, either of the batters to actually run. And that's usually why you're seeing so many of the defensive players located in and around the wicket there. At least that's what I've been able to gather from watching it there. But this one seemed to be a lot more like Test cricket than T20's, kind of looking like baseball's home run derby at Major League Baseball All-Star game, where, let's see how many balls we can hit out of the stadium or into the stands, if you will. And T20 cricket reminds me an awful lot of that. That's maybe one of the reasons why it's been appealing to me, having been a baseball fan. Um, Although I have enjoyed watching the highlights of one of my friends. His son plays college baseball here in the state of Ohio, and this was his first college year playing, and he had a very successful year this year. And it's been a lot of fun watching some of his highlights. But going back to the South Africa Sri Lanka matchup there, Anrik Nortje from South Africa, he had 4 overs that he bowled. He took 4 wickets and surrendered only 7 runs total. Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, this ended up being this score ended up finishing up, and I'm clicking back on the previous screen on my computer here. It finished up at 80-77. Okay, Sri Lanka was bowled out in the last over at 19.1, and South Africa reached 80 runs in the 17th over. So not a lot of runs being scored in this competition. In fact, it was the lowest run total Sri Lanka has ever had in their history of T20 cricket. And I'd like to say, I'm hooked on cricket. Okay, I'm absolutely hooked on cricket, and I'm still watching. And I know who won. I know who won the the IPL, but I'm still watching the rest of the IPL season as well. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I think I'm on match about 40, and I think there's about 65 altogether, including the final game. Um, but and I'll go back, during the rest of the year and go back and watch other cricket competitions as well, because it's not advertised in the papers here. It's not. It's barely covered in any sports here in the U.S. as well. I know they got a front page photo in the New York Times that cricket is here. Come check it out, that sort of thing. But ESPN, I had to really dig into their website before anything about the ICC World Cup even showed up on their website. I looked around on the Bleacher Report site and CBS Sports. I didn't see anything there as well. I did not look on the Fox Sports website, but if it's not one of the big four, or golf or auto racing here in the US, baseball, basketball, hockey, football here in the US, it generally doesn't get covered that. Oh, soccer also. I'm sorry, soccer as well. The big five, I should say, um, generally doesn't get covered. And it's one of the things that really makes me angry about like ESPN here in the United States is when they do talk about footy. And I don't watch Sports Center or things like that because I'm not really interested in sports here in the US anymore. Okay. I'll watch my favorite NFL team. I'll watch my favorite college football team, or a couple of them, Ohio State and the Naval Academy. I'll watch them play. But beyond that, I don't want to watch, I don't need to watch the highlights from the NBA or the NHL or Major League Baseball or all of the other NFL games. I can read up a little bit on it if I want to, but those things don't interest me anymore. It's footy and it's cricket. Okay. That's what interests me at this point in time in my life. And, but what I've seen of ESPN when they'll actually talk about footy, they don't quite understand the game, and then they kind of laugh at it. They poke fun at it, and it just really rubs me the wrong way. But I'm hooked on cricket now, and Major League Baseball. I don't miss you at all. I really don't. Okay, I wish it wasn't that way, but again, it was you, not me. Okay, so there's my take on what happened during round 12 and a little bit about the World Cup. I'm really enjoying that. I'd love to hear your take on things as well. Reach out to me over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com, on X at yank_on, via email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. Look out for one another, folks. Give your friends and family a call to check up on them, please. Um, if you need to talk to somebody, those numbers are always at the end of my show notes every single episode. Uh, And you can find everything related to my podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. I hope you'll get on the mailing list. If you want to help out the podcast, you can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button, or you can click on my Redbubble store page and check out some of the gear that's over there as well. If you want to leave a voicemail, and if you think you'd be a great guest on the podcast, I'd love to talk to you. Okay, I love telling great stories about people and their love of footy and their experiences, and even now, if you'd like to be my first interviewee, well, besides Tom Dunmore, who was involved in Major League Cricket and now is with the ICC, to talk a little bit about cricket, I'd love to have you on as well. So reach out to me again at my website, folks. And as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 336 of the podcast, A Yank on the Footy. Thanks for listening. I do hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share it with your friends as well. And until next time, everybody, cheers and goodbye.